It's time to focus on seniors with Helping Seniors TV. The television show designed to make you aware of senior issues and needs, as well as to acquaint you with the resources available to help you age in place and with dignity. Now, here's your host, Joe Steckler.
I'm Joe Steckler, and welcome to Helping Seniors, the television arm of Helping Seniors of Brevard County. Our show is designed to provide you with information on how to develop your own aging and care plans. Our topic today is VITAS Hospice Healthcare. And joining me is Kathleen LaPorte, who is the Senior General Manager at VITAS Healthcare. Welcome, Kathleen.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And before even to start a discussion, I want to remind our viewing audience that Kathleen recently did a radio show with me at radio station WMEL AM 1300. That show is archived on helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. And after you watch today's show with Kathleen and me, I want you to take the time to go to our website and pull up the radio show and listen to the radio show and compare what Kathleen talks about on the radio with what she's going to talk about today, because I think you'll find a connection very interesting. It was a very good, informative interview, Kathleen, and that's why I like to do both the television and radio, because the people that are the participants so often provide a different outlook from the radio perspective and from the TV perspective. But yours was an extremely good radio interview.
Thanks.
Yeah, I wouldn't make that comment unless it was really that. But you know, we can talk about hospice in so many different ways, and so many times when we talk about, we find people will pick up and see a show for the first time, and they won't have any idea what is hospice. What does hospice do, Kathleen?
Hospice is designed to care for patients that are terminally ill with a limited life expectancy. It's probably one of the best kept secrets for people. It's patients that are eligible for hospice. It's a service that's covered by Medicare and most insurances. And in that, it's an interdisciplinary approach to allow the patient and family to make their choices about end-of-life care. We support them. We provide physician coverage, nurses, social workers, chaplains, home health aides, and volunteers to support our families in dealing with this issue.
Hospice was originally designed to help cancer patients pass to the other side of life. But it's much more than that now.
It is. We care for anybody with a illness that is determined as life-threatening with a limited life expectancy. So anyone can refer a patient to hospice. We then contact their physician and make sure that hospice is appropriate for that patient. We have patients that have cardiac disease, end-stage liver disease, lung disease, any terminal illness. Usually you'll see your loved one not getting any better despite being treated. Maybe they've made multiple trips back and forth to the hospital and they continue to decline. We also look at what we call a functional decline. So a patient may have been able to do so much more previously. They maybe have gone from walking to not being able to get out of bed, or to not being able to eat in the way that they have before. So it's a wonderful service that provides support for families dealing with a crisis.
But I would imagine, I speak at it from a layperson viewpoint. I've spent 38 years in the military. I've seen people die. But my last job, I had command of the Navy's retirement home. So I had a hospital and an assisted living facility under my command. And we had a 4-wing hospital. And one of the wings was designed for, it really was a nursing home. End of life is exactly what it was, like hospice care. But one of the hardest things that I found was not only for the family, but for the person themselves to realize the death was imminent. And whether we liked it or not, it was a fact that had to be faced. I remember I had only been in command for a week, and I had a guy named Smiley that used to sit on the front porch of the naval home, and he was always green. He was only 52 years old. But within a month's time, he had several heart attacks. Mm-hmm. He had 3 sisters. We brought the sisters back because we didn't think Smiley was going to make it. And over a period of 3 days, they used the paddles on that man 26 times to bring him back. Mm-hmm. And I had a Catholic priest there, a Benedictine monk, and his name was Father Ackle. It was a wizened little guy. It looked like from the medieval ages. If you'd have put a bonnet over his head, he'd have scared you to death. Mm-hmm. But he had a heart of pure gold. And here I am, brand new to that job, and I called Father Ackle in because 2 of the sisters wanted to keep using the paddles, and one sister wanted to let her brother go. 2 of the sisters didn't want to. So I brought Father Ackle in, and I never will forget what that man said to me. He put his arm around my shoulder, and he said, "You did the right thing, Joe, when you called me," because he said, "I want you to remember this. There's always a time to let go." Mm-hmm. How true have you found that, Kathleen, in being a hospice nurse?
That's very true. And I've been doing hospice care since 1986. And most people, despite all that we've come and all the technology, we find that the average length of stay for a hospice patient is about 21 days. So people wait to the very end before they call hospice and think that's what they have to do. But the sooner a patient is referred to hospice, the better we can manage their symptoms so that whatever time they have remaining, they can have a good quality of life and enjoy that surrounded by their loved ones. So it is difficult for families and to let go, but we really need to make sure that we have good goals of care discussions with our patients and their families to let them know.
Is that what's called palliative care?
No, palliative care is a little different than hospice. Palliative care is for patients that are not quite ready for hospice, but yet they do have symptoms that are out of control. They're dealing with a chronic illness that could lead to be terminally ill, but it is to manage their symptoms. So it's in VITAS, it's mostly a physician practice where a physician will visit a patient and family, make recommendations to their doctor, or manage that care for that patient if that's what that physician chooses for them to do.
Okay. Explain to our viewing audience what the advantages of bringing hospice in early on as opposed to later in the life cycle. Mm-hmm. What are the advantages of saying, "I need a hospice," or "Hospice, come in and talk to me"? What do we gain?
You gain the ability to have what we call a peaceful and a good death. We resolve any conflicts that there may be. We work with the families for that. We manage symptoms. And again, it's the goal is to have the best quality of life that you can. So having the nurse come in and visit 1 to 2 times a week to manage medications, manage symptoms, having the chaplain visit to deal not only with the patient's issues and the family's issues, whether it's a spiritual issue that's contributing to their pain, having a social worker that's going to connect them to other community resources that might support them through this end-of-life issue, and having a home health aide that comes in every day. The sooner hospice is in, the more you get to know your staff, and the more the staff gets to know how to meet that patient's and family's needs. So most of the time, once you control symptoms for a patient, you're then dealing with the issues to support the family through what's a difficult time.
Okay. How, or is it a common or a prevalent type thing? Let's say, as Kathleen LaPorte, hospice nurse, how many times have you gone and you found a patient that the family was worried about telling the patient that death is imminent, but I try to make the association where the person knows they're going to die anyway, yet they're trying to be, the fact that they're dying is kept from them I sometimes have the inverted thought that it might be easier on the person that's dying if more people would be honest with them. You're laughing.
Because
Why did I say something?
That happens all the time.
It
Family
does?
members will say, I don't want my mother to know that they're on hospice, or don't use the H word, because they're concerned that they'll feel like their family's giving up on them. But in fact, we're focusing on making their days better. So, and patients do know that they're not getting better, that they're going back and forth to the hospital. So in some ways, I think they're protecting their loved ones, but in many instances, it's their own issues where they're not able to deal with the loss of their loved one.
I would suspect, Kathleen, that many people live their life and never really experience terrible pain.
Mm-hmm.
The pain that comes about from rips inside the body, when aortas rip, or you have a significant stroke and you know that you have the pain from the stroke, you have the pain from what the stroke has done to other limbs of your body, or you have some of these debilitating arthritic illnesses that it's very difficult to control the pain from them. I don't think until people experience something like that, they don't fully appreciate what the correct use of medications can do to relieve that pain that enables the person to relax and to accept what is happening. Can you help our viewing audience understand that a little bit better?
Right. One of the myths is that when somebody comes on hospice that they're only going to get morphine and that will be the only medication that they get. When patients are in pain, that is a medication that works very well for patients with chronic pain. I started as an admission nurse, so I'd go into patients' homes and I would see patients curled up in the bed in pain. We'd adjust their medications and then they would feel better and then they would be able to enjoy some time with their family. There are so many other things besides just morphine that we do to manage symptoms. There's a host of medications that our physicians who are board certified in hospice and palliative care will work on with families to maximize their symptom control. We also use non-pharmacological interventions such as music therapy, distraction, friendly visits from volunteers, meditation. There's other things that we can use to help with pain management in addition to pharmacological interventions. So once that patient's pain is controlled, then they can enjoy their family and their loved ones.
Yep. We're talking about pain. We're talking about management of a person's life in the latter stages of it. But there's another whole aspect. This doesn't even have anything to do with pain, doesn't have anything to do with medication or anything else. It's called advanced directives.
Correct.
And that is a part of the dying process that we really ignore that in this country.
We do. We're not very good at that. And when I do orientation for my employees, I say, I tell them that one of the leaders in end-of-life care was Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and she wrote a book on the good death. And she wrote that in 1969, I think is when it was published. I'm not sure of the exact date. But she talked about how technology has changed the way people die and that there's so much technology available that we tend to not focus on the patient. Well, fast forward that to 2015, and there's so much more technology. So it is really important, and there's a movement throughout the country that really is talking about people, taking the time and writing your advanced directives to look at and have the conversations. It's called Having the Conversation. Is actually the topic that they put on many, many websites, where you talk to your family about what your wishes are. What do you want to do if for some reason the doctor says that there's nothing more they can do for you? You need to let your family know what your wishes are. Do you want to be resuscitated? Do you want to be kept alive on a ventilator? Do you want to have all of those things? The other biggest thing that's so important that people tend to forget is to delegate a healthcare surrogate. somebody who's going to make decisions the way that you would want them to make those decisions if you're not able to speak for yourself. The third aspect is, a power of attorney. So, if somebody lives alone or has no one that no spouse or whatever, who is going to be able to access their funds to care for them? So they should designate a power of attorney for somebody that they trust. So,
and I am finding more and more, Kathleen, as I get deeper into the business of hospice and estate planning, financial planning, that there are so many untruths, and the way, for lack of a better word, I'll use the word financial advisor or person, that they'll prey on these people thinking that they've got them in a moment of weakness, and they won't get really what I call good powers of attorney. A power of attorney should be, this not something that you can say, sign a piece of paper and give them a will. You have to know who you're delegating these powers to.
You absolutely do. It should be somebody that you trust and somebody that you're comfortable with. And that's why we really encourage you to have those conversations with your family, because that should be the people that you trust the most. Yeah. So,
do you find with VITAS Hospice, if you can convince families to do things the right way, and by right way, I believe, is an open conversation between family members that can say, yes, I like this. No, I don't like that. Well, why don't you like that? Mm-hmm. Why do you think mom wants that? Or why don't you think dad wants it?
Right.
That's one of the hardest conversations for families to have. It's true, isn't it?
It is difficult for patients and families to have those conversations. But we at VITAS don't make those choices for them. We'll educate them about their choices, tell them what's available to them. And, we'll certainly, the best decision you make is an informed decision. So we'll give them all of the information they need to make the decision. We'll constantly have those conversations to say, well, it looks like things are continuing to get worse if they haven't made that decision yet. But it's really about patient and family choices. So this is your right as an individual to make those decisions for you. So if you do them now before you're in a crisis, then you won't have to deal with all of those issues at end of life.
What do you do as a hospice person that if you can, and I'm sure this is happening, you come into a situation where it's spelled out, just like written on black and white, yet some member of the family says, that's not the way I want it.
We accept the patient and family where they are, and then we'll gradually have those conversations. But it's really about the patient's and family's choice. So we're going to support that patient and family through whatever their choices are. I've had patients that have come onto the program not very accepting, but yet with the hospice involvement, they get to the point to realize, yes, my loved one isn't getting better. So we try to accept people where they're at when they come onto our program, because otherwise they wouldn't have any support.
But are you saying that by the team approach that you have, you try to use all members of that team
to
support, bend the family around to where they're eventually doing what the patient's dying wishes were or what they want?
Right. Well, it's not really bending the family around. It's really letting them see what's really happening. It's those honest conversations. You can look at your loved one and see that they're not getting better, that they're getting worse. So it really is being honest with them about what's happening. People often say, don't tell my mother about what's going on, but yet, we're never going to lie to somebody. So we're going to be honest about what we're seeing with the patient family, and then let the family make those decisions. Yeah. Because we're not really about making the decisions for them, but just educating them.
Sometimes the hardest person to convince is the family member that's going to live on.
Right.
The person that's going to pass,
it is.
They understand.
Right. And that's why hospice is designed to provide bereavement support for up to 13 months after a patient dies. So we extend that to 15 months at VITAS, but we do provide support to the family member after they've lost a loved one to help them with those issues.
Yeah. But don't most hospices do that, try to make sure that the family, after the person passes,
yes,
you do something. And I folks, before we went on the show, I asked Kathleen a question, and I found out that what's happens with something that your company started itself, and I'm talking about. I'll get Kathleen to talk about a little bit, but I know for a fact that many of us like to have a memory of a loved one as they pass. And one of the things they do will make bear. You tell our people.
So we have a program that's called Memory Bears, and we take a piece of clothing. A family can give us a piece of clothing that's going to remind them of their loved one, and we'll make it into a bear. So it's something that somebody can hug and hold, and when you're having those difficult moments, it's there for them. So we have volunteers. We have multiple volunteer sewing groups throughout the county, and they constantly make bears. In addition to our memory bears, we also have a veterans bear because we have a strong veterans program. So our volunteers will make veterans bears in whatever branch of the service that a patient is in.
You may get a Navy bear or an Army bear
or whichever branch of the service you're in. They will make it based on that uniform or just red, white, and blue, and they'll actually present the bear a certificate and a pin to thank our veterans for their services. And so they can use that. So say the patient's in pain, they can have that bear to hold on to as well. So we do that as also.
And folks, I'm going to tell you, you may laugh about making a bear or something like that, but my wife has a cousin she dearly loved and grew up with. She moved here to Melbourne and she passed. And Gary has a bear made from Lee's clothing. And the reason I know about it, because I can sit in my chair and look across the room, and there's that bear looking at me. Mm-hmm. And invariably, when I look at that bear, I think about Lee. Mm-hmm. And because actually where the bear is sitting is where Lee used to sit when she came to the house. Mm-hmm. So there are so many memories. And I think that one of the things, Kathleen, that hospice does, it enables families to have better memories of a very grim time in their life. And could you help our viewers understand how hospice can help make the passing easier for the family, not just for the patient, but for the family too? What do you do to help the family?
Like I mentioned before, once we get the symptoms controlled for a patient and family, you can't work with a family while their loved one is still uncomfortable. So our first focus is to manage the symptoms for the patient so that they're comfortable. Once we do that, the majority of care we do is with the survivors, with the family members. So we work with them on, listening to them, letting them share their stories. I think if you see your loved one peaceful and comfortable, it is an easier transition rather than being in the ICU with a bunch of tubes coming out every which direction. It's much more comfortable. 96% of people would rather die at home surrounded by the people that they love, so providing that support in the home allows people to die wherever they choose to be. And hospice is not only just provided in the home, but it's wherever that home is to that patient. So if the patient resides in a nursing home or an assisted living facility or at home, we provide that care there.
I remember when I had come out of the Navy home, I heard the ambulance go out about 2 a.m. in the morning, and I called my guard post and I said, "Was the ambulance just here?" And they said, "Yes, it was, Captain." And I said, "Where'd they go?" And they said, "They took Mr. Raspberry to the hospital." I said, "From now on, you call me and tell me that." I got dressed, and my wife and I went to the hospital, and I went right into the intensive care unit, and this guy was hooked up to every conceivable thing. He won a Silver Star in Korea. And he looked at me, put his hand out, and held my hand. And all the alarms in the place went off, scared me to death, Kathleen. And the nurse said to me, "Don't worry, Captain, it's fine." And here is this guy who won a Silver Star, and I'm sitting there, standing there, holding his hand with everything going on. That brought a situation to me that said, there's more to life, there's more to death, and we need to understand it a lot better. And I think that the shows on hospice can get very touchy, and I know right now what it's doing to me, but it's real life. That's what life is, and that's what hospice is. So more people need to have a better understanding of it, Kathleen. What would you say that are some of the most important things of Kathleen LaPorte's life as a hospice nurse? What has this really meant to you?
For me, it's meant that I've had the privilege of caring for so many patients and meeting so many families and learning their stories and supporting them. I gave you the example of going in as an admission nurse and seeing somebody curled up in pain, and then following up the next week and seeing that they're sitting up at the table with their family. So I feel like it's been a blessing in my life because I've got to know so many people that I would never have known otherwise. Yeah. And it's a privilege for people to entrust their care to us.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to understand that no matter how old we get, how hardened we get to the living of life, there's always a time in our life when something will touch us. And I will not apologize for a tear running down my face. I won't.
Should.
Because it is life. Hospice is life. And dying is life. And how we do this and how we do it more gracefully means a lot more to our families. So I want to thank you, Kathleen, for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
And I want to thank you, viewer, for watching. And I hope you've enjoyed this show that I've done today here with Kathleen LaPorte from VITAS Hospice Healthcare. Thank you, Kathleen.
Thanks.